Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to your full product? As you can see, I have placed my preliminary task next to my final media product to clearly show the improvement. It is apparent the overall aesthetic of my music magazine is much more professional than the college magazine. I believe this is because in my college magazine I was trying to use all the skills that I had acquired in Photoshop, and then later on focused more on the overall design and the impact it had on my overall product. In earlier stages of my main task product, and also in my flat plans, the change in layout has varied, and this is because of the feedback I received, and in response to that, created what is now my final product. I feel this progression has shown effectively the stages of how my skills in design have improved, as I have learnt that it is okay to break and challenge conventions if it can be justified to benefit the design, which I feel was my downfall in the college magazine, as there is no unique selling point. In my main task, I considered the format a lot more. For example, on my college magazine, some of the cover lines and puffs was obstructing the model, which could be easily avoided, and this is why my main task has been formatted the way it has, with all the cover lines grouped to the lower section of the page. I feel that the preliminary task allowed me to understand the process of designing, including the planning also, and by doing this I've created a media product that would appeal to the target audience that would be more successful, as it is more striking, especially with the mastheads, as there is a clear contrast in my main task to my preliminary task, as it was difficult to read this font, and I feel the effects for the word mirage was not needed, as it obstructed the view a little bit and did not relate to the magazine. As Drop D, it is directly related to the music genre, so would appeal to my target audience more. And this is something that I have learned and picked up on throughout my designing and planning. For my contents page, I feel the use of Adobe InDesign has benefited my contents page. As you can see, there is a much more ordered layout, and I believe this is from the research of existing media products, and also the way InDesign is formatted to work in columns. I feel existing media products and more research have been put into my main task than my preliminary task, and this is obvious as I have a lot more inspiration and different features in this than my preliminary task, which appears more rushed and generally quite basic. I feel my contents page has always been the weakest element of my magazine, and have felt that the lack of space is a key element to this, and did debate about extending my contents page onto a double page, however later decided against it. Upon this idea, I had to reevaluate the layout to include more content, which is still in a creative and visually pleasing way, yet still keeping the formal elements needed to show the contents of the articles, and also the extent of how many articles there are. The use of text wrap, especially in this article here, and layering of text on top of the image, benefits the page as it fits the space nicely, and it effectively fills it as well, as there's more room for folios, making it more value for money. And I feel I did not consider the folios at all with this in comparison to my main task, as there is no specific order, not chronologically in terms of magazine pages or in groups on content, and generally could be considered basic. I have created many drafts for my contents page as I wanted to create a page that looked just as professional as the rest of my magazine, therefore worked hard to do so. This is the progression of my drafts, which show an evident improvement in terms of codes that are used to suggest a contents page, as this was a very essential part of my feedback. I was informed that my contents page looked too similar to a cover page, for example the big image, the one single image with what could be cover lines here and a cover line here and just a banner, and the title was it looked too much like a masthead, and I felt there was no evidence of it being a contents page other than the contents of the title. The name of the title was contents. And in this one I felt it was very similar. The single image, the folios looked like cover. I then moved on to including multiple images and in a different format to suggest a contents page, which I then improved to include more folios, and now has changed to the cover page that it is now, which is this one, which then evolved into more columns, and I was told that it looked very linear, so I included the circular frames, which I felt made it look more professional, unlike this where there was only one single image, and that was the main focus point, whereas in my music magazine there is content in every part of the page, and there is a fluidity of the main cover picture onto the pictures for the other folios, and then onto the actual folios. Another thing that I've learned throughout this project is the effects of typefaces on the appearance and aesthetic of the page. For example, more than 2 or 3 typefaces create a confusing and overcomplicated page. It was not necessary and appears less professional than refining to a single typeface like I have here for the body text, and I've just experimented with changing the appearance of that typeface. I feel that this is important because it adds dynamics and interest, really. My double page spread has only had slight adjustments to suit the format of the page, though this is something essential and obvious. I have learnt to consider what the page would appear like once it's printed, as originally the binding would cut off the text as it overflowed from one page to the other, and I feel like that is a skill to improve, to know what it would look like printed. Overall, I have progressed a lot, and now know that design and layout is more important than staying to traditional elements, however to consider them still, but can develop and challenge them to benefit the overall product. I feel my final media product is appropriate to the target audience and would be something that they would consider buying, as I focus content and design on their interests gathered through primary research, which was not fully considered in the original college magazine, which is obvious through folios and design.